In the shadows of America's largest cities, a quiet war has been unfolding. For months, federal authorities had tracked whispers, encrypted messages, secret meetings, a growing network moving under the radar. They weren't drug traffickers or organized crime families. They were something different, an alliance of radical activists bound together by ideology, not profit. And this week, that network finally met its reckoning. Dawn raids, armored vehicles on quiet suburban streets, helicopters circling above. Federal agents moved in, coordinated, precise, unrelenting. It was the largest domestic sweep of its kind in years, ending months of investigation into what officials describe as a nationwide campaign of organized extremism.
It started small. Authorities first noticed the pattern in the aftermath of several violent demonstrations earlier this year. What appeared to be isolated clashes in major cities soon began to look like something coordinated. Similar symbols, shared communication channels, and synchronized activity across state lines. According to internal reports, encrypted group chats and social media accounts revealed operational planning, locations, targets, and methods, suggesting the existence of an organized command chain. Behind anonymous avatars and aliases, investigators found a network with layers: recruiters, funders, and field coordinators.
It's really interesting because Antifa has several different sources of funding. One of the ways that I remember for back in my day, a lot of people did have jobs and they were self-funded. But I do know that there's been several different, I'm not sure specifically, it's not GoFundMe kind of thing, but websites like GoFundMe that will set fundraisers for Antifa activists to get them out of jail, to do all of these things. I remember several years ago that you had Representative Ocasio-Cortez supporting people to donate to bail people out of jail who were affiliated with Antifa. And there's also book author Mark Bray, who wrote the book Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, who actually donates a proceed of his books to certain unnamed Antifa-esque organizations. So there was definitely a lot of different sources.
Federal intelligence analysts began piecing the puzzle together. They called it Operation Crosspoint. The goal? Infiltrate the communications, identify the structure, and dismantle it from the inside. Meanwhile, protests intensified. Cities like Portland, Seattle, and Chicago saw recurring confrontations between demonstrators and law enforcement. For many, these were cries of anger, of resistance. But to investigators, it was something more deliberate, a network testing its reach and response. Then came the breaking point. An attack on a federal facility. Windows shattered, vehicles burned, dozens injured. That single night changed everything. By mid-summer, the federal government had authorized multi-agency task forces to respond. Teams from multiple departments, including Homeland Security units, federal marshals, and intelligence specialists, were quietly reassigned. Their mission? To identify key members of what officials now labeled a domestic extremist organization. Surveillance operations began immediately. Agents tracked digital footprints across state borders, monitored bank transactions, and intercepted messages through lawful warrants. They discovered cells operating under code names, small groups acting independently but guided by a shared doctrine. In an internal memo obtained by investigative journalists, one line stood out. This is no longer protest, it's organized disruption. Authorities had linked the network to dozens of coordinated property crimes, attacks on public infrastructure, and cyber interference aimed at destabilizing local governments. And while political leaders debated the legality and optics of such operations, federal teams on the ground prepared for the largest domestic takedown in years. On the morning of the operation, over 300 federal agents were deployed across 5 states. At 4:45 a.m., the raids began. Time to strike all locations simultaneously. Drones hovered overhead. Command vehicles lined suburban streets. Within minutes, doors were breached, suspects detained, and hard drives seized. One senior agent described it as surgical, quiet, fast, and overwhelming. By sunrise, the network's leadership structure had collapsed.
By afternoon, the headlines exploded. Federal crackdown on radical cells. Coordinated domestic sweep leads to dozens of arrests. News outlets scrambled to understand what had just happened and who exactly had been taken in. Officials revealed that over 40 individuals were charged under federal racketeering and conspiracy statutes, a move that signaled how seriously the government viewed the case. Among the seized evidence were laptops, encrypted drives, and handwritten maps of protest zones. Investigators said the materials proved months of strategic planning. At a press conference later that day, a federal spokesperson stated, "This was a coordinated effort to dismantle a criminal network operating under the guise of activism. Their actions endangered lives, destroyed property, and undermined lawful demonstration."
Every day and every night for months, scenes like these unfolding here as Portland's Antifa aggressively protests Trump's immigration policies outside the federal ICE detention facility.
Critics, however, saw it differently. Civil rights organizations questioned the scope of the operation, warning that legitimate dissent could be swept up in a broad federal net. They demanded transparency, insisting that peaceful activists should not be criminalized for exercising their rights. On the streets, the mood was divided. Some cheered the arrests, saying their neighborhoods had become battlegrounds for too long. Others saw it as intimidation, a government flexing power against political opposition. But behind closed doors, federal agents reviewed the seized data, and what they found suggested the network was far from finished. In a federal briefing, analysts uncovered new layers: international chat servers, funding channels routed through nonprofits, and encrypted payments used to support travel and logistics. The network wasn't confined to one ideology or one region. It was evolving. A senior intelligence official described it as a digital web of extremism, capable of reconstituting itself even after leaders were arrested. The challenge now wasn't just prosecution, it was prevention. Experts warned that the rise of radical networks is part of a broader trend where ideology spreads faster online than authorities can contain it. From fringe forums to encrypted apps, recruitment and planning have moved beyond traditional surveillance methods. "This is the new frontier," said one criminologist. Not the mafia, not cartels, but decentralized networks, united by cause, not command. As investigations continue, agents are racing against time, knowing that each delay gives the next generation of extremists room to adapt.
The information that comes out is not always a complete picture, but I think it's a pretty good indicator of who the money is coming from and who is receiving the money and what they're using it for.
Tonight, America stands at a crossroads. To some, these arrests mark a victory, a decisive stand against chaos. To others, they raise haunting questions about power, freedom, and the future of protest in the digital age. But one truth remains: in every movement, there are those who push too far, and when ideology turns into violence, the line between freedom and threat begins to blur. This is not the end of the story. It's only the beginning of a new chapter, one where the battle for safety, control, and truth will be fought not just on the streets, but in the shadows of the web.